This is the Listen Up Girl podcast, and I'm your host, Zach Randall-Friedman. Today is Friday, July 24th, 2026. And today we have a ton to get into. But I want to warn you up front about this episode because it goes very dark in certain parts before it gets to the light. So stick with me. We're going to talk about a pastor who says gay people should be killed, a trans woman who was put in a homeless men's shelter and was sexually assaulted, and a whole lot more. But I promise we end up somewhere good. So let's get into it. Starting with Pete Hegseth, pastor says gay people should be executed. So we're starting today with something that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago, and yet here we are. Pete Hegseth, personal pastor, the man who leads religious services in the Secretary of Defense's home, has gone on the record saying that in his ideal world, the punishment for gay people is execution. That is not a misquote. He said, and I want you to really hear this, yeah, I'm homophobic and transphobic, and you've never met anybody worse. He wasn't joking. He wasn't being ironic. He doubled down, saying that in a legal framework, homosexuality is a capital offense, and that means death for being just who you are. This is a pastor of a man who runs the United States military. The man with control over nuclear codes, military operations, and the lives of hundreds of thousands of service members, including LGBTQ people who are currently serving. But I want to be clear, Hegseth did not publicly distance himself from these comments. There has been no statement from the Department of Defense. There has been no firing and no condemnation. This is the world we are living in, and the people running it are not hiding who they are anymore. Very scary. Next, a trans woman forced into a men's shelter assaulted and is now suing New York City. So from Washington, D.C. to New York, and this story is devastating. A houseless trans woman in New York City has filed a lawsuit against the city after she says she was forced into a men's homeless shelter and she was sexually assaulted there. She told authorities she needed safe housing. She identified herself as a transgender woman, and rather than place her in a shelter that matched her gender identity, she was told she would need to be at least 1 year into hormone therapy to be housed as a woman. 1 year into hormone therapy as a requirement for basic safe housing shelter. She was placed in a men's facility. She was sexually assaulted, and now she's suing New York City because no one should have to survive what she has survived just to have a roof over their head. This is not hypothetical. This is not worst case scenario. This is what happens when bureaucracy decides that paperwork matters more than safety. Policies that exclude trans people from gender-affirming shelter placements are not just inconvenient. They are dangerous. They are life-threatening, and when cities fail trans people this profoundly, there has to be consequences. And I am rooting for her very hard because nobody should have to go through this. Our next story is Netherlands. Gender-affirming care for trans youth is morally urgent. So let's take a breath and go international, because in the middle of everything happening here in the United States, the Netherlands just reminded the world what it looks like when the government actually looks at evidence. A major Dutch government review on gender-affirming care for transgender youth has concluded that the care is, and these are the words, morally urgent. The review acknowledged that some of the long-term risks of gender-affirming care remain uncertain, but the researchers found that the sort of harm of withholding care are extremely well documented. The anxiety, the depression, the suicidal ideation, the damage done when trans youth are told to wait, to doubt themselves, to be denied the care they need while their bodies change in the ways that they feel are deeply wrong. The conclusion was clear. The risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of providing care. This is what happens when governments actually read the science instead of using trans kids as political football. Here in the United States, we're watching states ban gender-affirming care. The Supreme Court that has upheld these bans, and the administration is trying to strip it from federal programs. And meanwhile, the Netherlands is looking at the same body of evidence and saying, no, this care is morally urgent. We have an obligation to provide it. The contrast could not be more stark. Next, gay Republican sexual harassment. Gay Republican found liable for sexually harassing two men, faces calls to resign. Now, this story is about accountability, and this is also a story about a particular whiplash watching a gay Republican be held to standards his own party spent years trying to erase. A gay Republican elected has been found legally liable for sexually harassing two separate men. A jury found in favor of the plaintiffs and is now facing calls to resign from office. I'm not going to pretend there isn't a certain amount of irony here, but this is a member of the party that has spent years attacking LGBTQ plus people, and now one of their own openly gay members is facing a harassment verdict. But let me be clear here. Being LGBTQ plus doesn't make you immune to abusing your power. Sexual harassment is sexual harassment. It doesn't matter whether you identify it or not. What accountability doesn't get suspended because you happen to be part of a marginalized group. The calls for resignation are appropriate. The legal finding stands. And frankly, in a moment when so many powerful people face zero consequences, it's worth noting that sometimes the system does work. Next, Boebert's trans military ban blocked by House Democrats. So we needed some good news, and here it is. Lauren Boebert introduced a bill into the House that would have codified a full ban of transgender people serving in the United States military. There wasn't a hearing, it wasn't a talking point, and she put it in writing and brought it to a vote. The House Democrats united and stopped her. Every single Democrat voted against the measure. The bill did not advance. Now, let's be real. The orange convicted felon has already imposed a trans military ban through executive action. The fight is not over, but what happened this week matters. It matters because Democrats showed up, unified for us without hesitation, and they blocked something that would have done real harm. Trans people who have served, who are serving, and who want to serve, they deserve to know that there are people in power fighting for them. And this week, there were. That's worth celebrating even as we keep fighting. Our next story is trans mom goes viral doing Tucker Carlson impression to fund her own surgery. And we are closing today on something that genuinely made me smile because sometimes this community is just unbelievably brilliant. A trans mom has gone viral on social media for a fundraiser she created to help pay for her gender-affirming surgery, and her strategy was to do dead-on Tucker Carlson impression. If you haven't seen it, she basically does the confused, head-shifting, head-tilting, squinting Tucker face and narrates her own story in his voice, asking all the ridiculous rhetorical questions he would ask. But why? But how? But why does it mean? But what does it mean? It's hilarious. It's sharp, and it is working. The fundraiser has raised a significant amount of money because people cannot stop sharing it. Trans joy and trans humor doing what they do best, taking tools of mockery that have been aimed at us and turning them into something powerful, something that actually helps. She's a mom, she is trans, she is funny as hell, and she is going to get her surgery. That is the energy we need today, and that is how we survive this moment with laughter, with community, and with each other. What a great way to end today's news podcast. So this is Listen Up Girl for Friday, July 24th. If this show moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a minute, leave a rating and a review. It genuinely helps more people find the show. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at The Real Zach RE and visit listenupgirl.com for every episode. I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.